Hi, welcome to another Revenue Hub video series. Following the success of our AI series in the summer, please do check it out if you haven't seen them yet, we decided it would be great to get our expert partners' views once more. In the spirit of this time of year, we've asked them to predict what 2026 might have in store for the hotel industry. Now, through these videos, we are not inundating you with please subscribe and please like requests. You guys know what to do. But we would be interested to hear your thoughts on the predictions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your predictions? Anyway, hope you enjoy it, and thanks again to our expert partners for taking part. Let's see what their predictions are. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our 2026 Crystal Ball Predictions video series. I really appreciate you finding the time. How are things for you today?
Good. Thanks for having us.
No, you're welcome. I'm really looking forward. You always, whenever I see what you've written and spoken about, it's always I always find it fascinating and interesting. So I don't want to set the bar too high for these predictions, but I am looking forward to this conversation and to hear what you have for us. So let's, without any further ado, let's kick off. What is prediction one going to be all about?
So I think one of the obvious topics of the day is AI, and specifically, so AI is a very generic idea that applies in a million places. So let me get much more specific. I think AI chatbots, meaning ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, etc., are for the first time going to be a significant driver of business for hotels. It's going to be the start of something that will be pretty huge in the future. I think that we are in the initial phases of something like Google 25 years ago or the iPhone 50 years ago that were major drivers for consumers to find hotels and eventually become guests. So kind of an upper funnel place. And the logic is pretty simple. Every time that something, a technology, an enabler, a community, or whatever, is able to aggregate demand, and then a huge number of people use that, then brands, whatever they are selling, and hospitality is one of those cases, have to be there. Mm-hmm. So you have to be in Google, then you have to be on the iPhone, and then you have to be in ChatGPT.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. Where do you think there will be a dominant player comes out of this? I mean, we've heard about ChatGPT, and they're talking about being able to go in and almost book in one click, but Google have tried that and they weren't able to crack it.
So let me tell you my prediction or the way I think it's going to play out, but with the grain of salt that there's a huge level of uncertainty about all of this, right? So I think there will not be just one winner. I think there will be several, not 100, but there will be maybe 3 or 4 winners, because the AI is going to become a commodity pretty quickly. So the models themselves, they are chasing each other already, and they are all good. It's not like anyone has an advantage over the others for any more than a few months at best. So whenever the models become a commodity, then it's a bit like electricity. You don't really care who's your provider for electricity. So when that happens, then it means that, but also there's huge economies of scale. So it's not like a huge fragmented market. It's a few consolidated ones that are very similar into their offering. So I think that's what's going to happen from the core offering in AI models. So then suddenly the marketing piece becomes very relevant, because if you are for the guest or for the traveler, then they don't really care how the technology works in the back end. They only care about the user experience. So, and that's basically marketing. So I think if you ask me, there's 2 potential obvious winners. One is ChatGPT, because it has the AI brand way better than the other ones. And the other one is Google, because it's Google and they already have everything already. So there's this idea on, I don't know if you have heard that in the battle between Netflix and HBO back 15 years ago, 20 years ago, HBO was like the incumbent, super established, great quality, but very traditional TV. And then Netflix comes with the streaming thing. No? So one of the top guy from Netflix said, well, the question here is, can Netflix become HBO before HBO becomes Netflix?
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
So this is very similar. Is can ChatGPT become Google before Google becomes ChatGPT?
Got you.
I think Google has all of the pieces to be a major player, probably the major player in this new space, and they have much more experience than anyone else, including ChatGPT. So I think that the strategy they will follow will not be the same because Google comes from a different place. Google already has Google Hotel Ads with all of that means, and ChatGPT has to start from scratch in that space.
Yeah, and I guess they're working out how they're going to monetize it. Because when you look at what the investment numbers are and you look at what the revenue generation is, it's a very small percentage of revenue generation to the investment figure at the moment. Another quick question for you, and then we'll get on to your second prediction. You know, you've written recently about almost like the iPhone moment, and I was thinking when I read that is the iPhone what AI is, and it's the actual agents that we will have built on top of AI that will go out and do the work for us.
So I think the core companies like OpenAI or Google, they are not necessarily interested on going into any particular industry. It's much more profitable to stay on building the core platform. That's why it's much better to be Google than to be a hotel chain. I think we can all agree there, no? It's much more profitable. Why? Because Google doesn't have operations in the real world. It's kind of a more comfortable place to be. So why would you go there on a smaller margins? So on a pure, even if they could do it, it's not clear that they want to do it. And you mentioned a key thing before. Google actually had booked with Google, which didn't work. And TripAdvisor had booked with them and it didn't work either. So I think what that proved is that even if you can do the full thing in the provider where you discover something, you can book it with one click, you don't want to do it as a user. And we can argue why that is the case. In my opinion, it has to do a lot with you need a much more discovery and a longer decision-making process than just one click. One click is easy for cheap things that you know already. But on a big decision, you don't want one click. So we should not overestimate the simplicity of the usability in order to convince you to do something. So I think that the marketplace for apps that OpenAI announced is, from my point of view, this idea of enabling everyone else to come into the ecosystem of ChatGPT and build from there. And I think that's going to work because ChatGPT on its own doesn't cover everything you need. You need real data from the outside. And I think that combination is going to be very interesting. That's where I think is going to be the next steps in innovation are going to be there. More, in my opinion, that this very science fiction idea of an agent that does stuff for me. I think that an agent that replicates human behavior is a bit like asking for a faster horse.
Right.
It's like replicating current behavior with something new instead of building new behavior.
Yes, understand. Okay. There's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the second prediction you've got for us today?
So another one would be, I think hoteliers have too many dashboards, too many areas in which they could act.
Right.
And they have to make a very large number of small decisions. And I think a lot of that should be automated. I think when we talk about data-driven decision-making, it means this idea we call internally at the company, we have this like umbrella project to work on many ideas, we call it superpilot, which is basically how much we can give you an autopilot so you don't have to think. First, because no one has time. If there's a restriction, I think if any, maybe contrarian idea, but people are missing more on time than on money. And as hospitality companies, I see all the time hoteliers reacting saying, this is an interesting initiative. I don't have the time to manage it. And therefore I don't do it then. So we are not optimizing for financial results. We are optimizing for how we can manage the workload and the time. So I think that there will be a lot of people trying to automate things that now have to be done manually. And many of them involve data to make decisions. If the data is pointing to a decision, why don't you let whoever that is to do it automatically without you being there? It doesn't mean that you lose control. It means that the basic groundwork is done, and then you do the tiny part of the work where you add value because you're making a decision, not just implementing something that anyone can do.
So in the same way that when the RMSs evolved and you would put conditions around certain actions and you would have those barriers there, and it could, you would then maybe make that decision, and then that involved to being able to do that automatically. What you're now saying is that as we're starting to pool data together and break down those silos, and we're getting our dashboards more like a business intelligence now, and we're pulling in, it's now looking at, okay, fine, well, which elements of those can I now put some guardrails around or put some rules around that will actually go and action? So we start to not just look at the dashboard, but question the dashboard as, what do we do with it? And are there ways that I can now automate that to free up some of my time rather than those repetitive tasks?
Correct. And it's not only going to be better for you because you spend less time, it's actually going to be more effective, because it's very hard to maintain the same level of quality across a huge number of people that change over time, and some of them are better than others, and you have to learn in job and everything, where the system can learn faster than you can. One of the unfair advantages for a machine versus a human is that the learning continues over time, and it's not new people having to learn every time and being retrained. So I think that there's a piece in the hotel business which is about building the right experience for the consumer, for the guests, once they are the property. That's very unique and very human. I don't see a lot of machine learning on AI or any type of other approaches on improving when you get there and how you experience the hotel. However, the process of communicating and online selling and personalizing the experience before you get there, a lot of that is not really doesn't need a human decision making, because what you have to do is obvious.
There's been that emphasis on guest experience pretty much since we came out of the pandemic. I guess the two things that came out was a focus on profit, and that shifted the conversation from revenue to profit, and then the focus on the guest experience. And so by using data, using technology to help consolidate that information, analyze, and then start to act, you're starting to reshape what you might need within the property to focus on the guest experience when people are there.
Yeah, and it helps that people love experiences and they're ready to pay for them. So actually building a better experience is the way to more profit. They are not diverse goals.
Well, that would seem like the competitive angle, because at the end of the day, I guess if we're all starting to use pricing solutions, then the prices are all going to be relatively closely aligned. You've got similar service, so we go back to, I guess we almost go back to the future in a way, where it was when you used to walk into the hotel, it was how the hotel made you feel, how the staff made you feel, and that was the experience that you took away that made you loyal and recommended them and wanted to go back.
Yeah, and then another interesting thing is I think hospitality is probably the market, anything online, where there's more transparency for prices. You can see the same hotel across 15 different OTAs and 100 other hotels in the same place, and everything is public, and it takes you 50 seconds to find all of that. That's very unique. So, as to your point, prices are so open that there's at some point very little you can do with it once you optimize, which, by the way, is interesting too, because I always say, kind of joking with our clients, that hoteliers are obsessed with pricing because it's the only thing you can change every day. In the hospitality business, almost all of the variables that in another industry you could play around with are fixed. The hotel is where you cannot change the location. It has a number of rooms, you cannot change that. It has a category, you cannot change that. Obviously you can, but it's a huge investment and it's a long time, but there's no tactical way to do something different. No? However, you can do pricing every single day, several times if you want to. So I feel there's been a bit too much focus on pricing in the last 10 years versus maybe other elements. And I think that this idea that prices are already pretty well done, combined with the birth of AI, I think the next few years are going to be about content, not about prices. Meaning, you have to tell a better story on why your hotel is better than the other one at the same price. not why it is cheaper, it's because at the same price or even more expensive, but actually the value for money is better. So I think a lot of the brands are going to try to focus on this, and this gives some advantage to the high-end properties, because typically the more high-end, the better story you have to tell.
Yeah, more areas of differentiation.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a third prediction for us?
Well, let me make another one, which is partly hospitality, but even more, a bit more generic even, no? Mm-hmm. One of the other use cases of AI is to have assistants that instead of talking to a person, you talk to an AI agent.
Yeah.
I think we've seen a lot of that in writing. ChatGPT became super popular because you can write and it looks like it's a person behind it. I think the next frontier is voice. We've been at the company looking at that for over a year now. I think in 3 or 4 years from now, we will never call a business and talk to a person. It will only be AI agents. Because I think from my perspective, as a user experience, it's going to be better. Because for 95% of the use cases, it's way quicker to talk to an AI, provided that it's an intelligent one and not the terrible systems.
I was going to say, having experienced one yesterday, It was horrendous, and all I kept typing in was, "Is there a human being, please?"
Correct. I think we are being trained to think that the automated phone systems are terrible because it's press here, press there, repeat, I don't understand. But that's all that the old technology. The new technology is 100 times better, literally. And for the majority of the very heavy work of dealing with very repeated questions, it's better for the person who calls, you get the answer quickly. And it's actually better for the people behind, because it's a terrible job to be in a call center answering repeated elements. No? So I think the technology is not there yet to be a perfect, but it's improving at the speed at which at some point it doesn't make sense to have people repeating.
As you say, I mean, you've been working on it, I think you said, for about a year or so now. I mean, there must be a huge amount of challenges to that over and above getting the text piece right, just in terms of it feeling pretty natural. I mean,
correct.
And you reckon that speed will achieve that within 3 to 4 years?
For sure. I think the barrier now is more in us getting used to it than it's in the technology itself. The technology already covers 60% of the cases, and it will be 90% within a year from now. And when I'm talking about cases, I mean that it's a really good experience when talking to the machine. No? The AI really understands you really well. So it's more a matter of the expectation of the person who is calling. That is from the core technology itself. One of the, I think, most interesting things from a societal point of view is that the fact that we can interact with machines that talk to you like if they were people, but they clearly aren't, means that we need new protocols and agreements on what is the normal way to do this. We still don't know exactly how to talk to a machine, or we will. In a way to put it is, we use keywords and now we do conversations, and that's a completely different thing. For example, just to go a little rabbit hole here, but the user interface for any category gets refined after a few players do something, and then one is better, it becomes the normal, everyone copies that. The feed for Facebook became the feed for every social media app. The feed is a new interface. No one had thought about that before. So we still don't know what is going to be the interface with AI in the future that becomes the obvious norm. Now we are experimenting with a number of them, but none of them is the final one yet. And I think that's probably one of the most interesting things that we see over the next couple of years.
And I just want to, while we're going down rabbit's hole, I'm conscious of your time, so I'll just grab 5 more minutes if I can, because as a founder of a business, the challenges that you face when starting up are numerous, but finances are one of those. I wonder what the challenges will be faced in the future, because with the ability of AI to replicate so many things, the uniqueness that investors are often looking for, and the difficulty to enter a market that gives the property, gives that idea that initial traction that they can then lean into, if it's much easier to replicate, it almost feels a bit like how we look to the east to do the manufacturing because they could start doing it much cheaper, and then they start replicating the products. And now we see with electric cars how they have kind of reversed the cycle, and then now that's more dominant. I just wonder how, with this growth of technology, how that may shift that platform a little bit. This isn't a prediction, so this is just an interesting point I wanted to ask someone in your space who's been there and had to go through this and very much at the forefront.
I think it's a very relevant question. So product building has become easier and cheaper and faster. Therefore, less of a competitive advantage in the long term. Then what? But you still need a competitive advantage. This word that people love in the industry, a moat. No? Well, funny enough, then it turns to be real world things. So I think that distribution was always very important, but now it's going to be even more important. The fact that it's not building something, it's actually being able to distribute it to the public, whatever that is. And then I think so the first layer of value in AI is purely digital. ChatGPT is a purely digital product. It doesn't interact with the real world. I think the second layer would be interacting with the real world in whatever that is. You know? So it's improving an industry with new technology, but that the effect happens in the real world. Let's just make it up. You go to the supermarket, and all the products you want are there for you when you arrive, instead of you going and fetching them one by one.
Yeah.
Because if the supermarket already knows what you want, why are you still crawling around the place?
Got you.
My point is
it's responding to you and where you are, rather than you having to interact with how it's always been. Yeah.
And also in something in which now involves a physical element. And physical elements are much harder to deal with, because as we were discussing before, any change there is much more expensive than any change in coding. So the good thing with technology is that if it doesn't work, you can change it pretty quickly and deploy it to everyone immediately. I think that's the magic of SaaS and the cloud, is that any change goes to everyone immediately. And if you own a chain in retail and you have to change something, it takes months and millions of investment to do even tiny changes. So how can we merge those two worlds so that the experiences you have in the real world when you are acting outside of the office and sitting in front of the computer, how that gets improved because of the new technology?
No, that makes sense. I knew it would be interesting. You haven't let me down. 3 great predictions. I'm going to diarize to come back to you at the end of 2026 and see where we are, and see how we need to adjust it.
Okay.
But no, that's wonderful. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No worries, Trevor. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found the predictions discussion interesting. If you'd like to see any of our videos from our Summer AI series, here is a link to that playlist. And if you've missed any of the other prediction videos, here is a link to that playlist. And finally, can I genuinely just thank you all for watching or listening to our content? It really is appreciated, and we look forward to bringing you more in 2026. Thanks so much. Take care.